We are at the end of another series. You know, I look forward to this series, and this one was decluttering. How we've got this junk drawer that we call our faith, and it's piled full of stuff that we is that really my faith, or is that what's given to me by somebody else? And it doesn't really fit in, and it's kind of useless. And we just kind of decluttering it. And we went into the idea of the basics. You know, it's knowing and growing and serving and sharing. Knowing Christ and growing in our faith and serving those that we meet. And today, sharing God's love. And that's where we start. But I have to start with kind of some bad news, because gone are the times when people look at the church and think, good news, that's another church. You know, gone are those days. You know, not too many people go through a society in general and say, oh, the church, oh, that's the place we have to go. You know, so many people, even that come here, have had negative experiences in church. Or they've gotten to the place where church has kind of become irrelevant for them. And in either way, that they just don't go. They don't see it as good news. The fastest growing demographic in our culture are the nuns. Not the people that wear the habits and that. It's N-O-N-E-S, those that say, oh, what religious experience or affiliation do you have? And they say, none. I don't have any religious affiliation. I don't think any church. I'm just none. And that's where people are right now. And on the one hand, I'm glad for that, because people they've stopped being fake about it. They just said, I'm just going to be honest with who I am. I don't look at a church and say that's great news. I don't want to be part of a church. I don't even want part of any religion. And they're just honest about it. They're not cultural Christians anymore. Like if you grow up in a Muslim country, I'm Muslim, or like bad people come and do crazy things over there. Or if you grow up in the South, oh, I'm Baptist. You know, you have to be. You know, that is, anybody grow up in the South? That's just how it is. You're obviously a part of a church. And people have said, no, I've stopped faking this. Because our culture is becoming more and more post-Christian. And that's hard for us to hear. It no longer is it shouted from the top, and we are about this. I had a high school senior come to me one time, and he said, oh, let's do lunch. I said, great. I love these things. I'll come. And then in the middle of our lunch, he goes, so Matt, can you convince me that Christianity is the best religion? And I'm thinking, man, I just want to finish my sandwich with you. I'm enjoying our time together. And it took me a while to understand what he was looking for. So I asked a bunch of questions to find out where he was at. And he was deep in a struggling time, questioning lots of things. He wanted to find out, what's this big idea about Christianity? There's churches all over. And what's the big deal about that? I'm looking at other religions as well. Tell me how Christianity is the best. And we sat at the place and we talked for about it was almost about an hour. And we just talked and talked. And he asked questions, and he was really respectful. And we just talked about why Christianity. What the sad part, well, maybe not the sad part, but the part that I found tough is that he looked at me as his go-to Christian. I was the person, I'm the answer man for him. I basically was representing all Christians at that time. I'm the only person in his world that he could say, well, I can ask these Christian questions. And at the end, it was kind of like I felt him saying, hey, good try, Matt. So I never saw him in church again. He never came to youth group anymore. He was just, no, if that's the way it is, I'm going to be one of these nuns. No affiliation. And that's tough to hear. I felt like I had failed God. Like I'm supposed to have these answers that just turns a person and says, oh yeah, great, I'm in. I felt like I failed him. But this is our world right now. We live in kind of like a religious market. It's like we have the farmers market downtown Muskegon. This is like the religious market. You know, Christians are just one little kiosk, one little table where we get to talk about Jesus. But there's all different types of tables there. Oh, I'm about this. I'm about this. This is my world. And there's the Christians that are over here, and they're just, this is what we're talking about. The Christians, the Buddhists, the Islam, whatever we have. Oh, you know what? I want my kids to be moral, but I don't want any of this baggage about some religion. Oh, yeah, that's a good table over there. Oh, I want to be radical about loving other people, but I don't want anything to do with a God, this religious baggage there. Oh, that's this table. You know, Christianity, what's our table? You know, we feel like we need to sell Christianity all the time, and we're just total failures at it. The other people at the other kiosks are much more polished. They're much louder. They're much more convincing than we are. So we're saying, well, what do I do about God's love? I'm not a real good spokesperson. So we pretend that their eternity isn't at stake, and we go hide in the corner, and we never bring it up. Or we just pretend that we don't have the words, or we're not going to be given them. But like it or not, we live in a religious market, and we have been called to do more than hide in the corner with our faith. And today, I hope that you will be encouraged. I don't want you to hear guilt that, oh, you're just a failure like that. I want you to hear that this is possible for us. This is something, sharing God's love is something that we can do. We've been empowered to do. And we have no right sitting in the corner because we've been given words to say. So that's where I hope to go. And the Apostle Paul starts off with this, and he talks with people just like us. In 2 Corinthians chapter 5, and I encourage you to look it up in your own Bibles. It's in the program. It'll also be on the screen. But he talks about our role as sharing God's love. And I want to read a little bit to you, just so you hear Paul saying this is possible for you. So read with me if you can. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, I'll pick it up at verse 16. So we've stopped evaluating others from a human point of view. At one time we thought of Christ merely from a human point of view. How differently we know him now. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone. The new life has begun. And all of this is a gift from God who brought us back to himself through Christ. And God has given us this task of reconciling. Hold on to that word reconciling. Reconciliation. It'll keep going. Given us this task of reconciling the world to himself, no longer counting people's sins against them. And he gave us this wonderful message of reconciliation. So we are Christ's ambassadors. God is making his appeal through us. We speak for Christ when we plead, come back to God. For God made Christ, who never sinned, to be the offering for our sin, that we could be made right with God through Christ. Does anybody know what the word reconciling is? Because Paul uses it 3 different times there. He says reconciling, reconciliation. You know, if you have a credit card company that you have their card, you charge things on. Every month they send you a statement that says, you owe us money. We're not going to be friends if you don't pay this amount. So what you do is you send them a check, or however you do it. You know, youngsters will say, oh, I just pay it online. It's awesome. However it goes, you pay this, and then it is reconciled. You are friends with that company again. They consider you a friend. because you pay them what they are owed. It's the same that Paul's talking about, because it's a market word that he's using here. It's the idea of restoring friendly relations between two. Just like the card company, they need to be paid because you took money and you got something. Paul's saying, wait a minute. There's a God that you owe something to. You owe something to God. You have a sin problem. You have sinned. Not just one. You are broken inside. You inside are corrupted. And there's no way you can take care of this on your own, but you owe something. Something has to be paid here. And you can't pay it. This is God's big story, starting off with saying, hey, this is the reality. You have a sin problem. But let me tell you about Jesus. Jesus can pay this sin problem for you. Anybody who comes to Jesus and says, will you pay this for me? Because I can't. Jesus says, oh, my child, this is the one I will pay it for. You know, God, a long time ago, before you were even born, even before your parents were born, God said, I'm choosing you to be my child. You have this sin problem, but I'm going to make a way for you to be my child. I'm going to make it so that all this animosity, this enemy situation, that you are not on friendly terms with God, I'm going to make a way that you can be on friendly terms with God again. This is God's story of bringing people back to Him, reconciling. This is God's story. We need to know God's story. The Bible from front to back is about God's story, saying it was made perfectly, and then there's sin that got in it, and we have all been corrupted. Now how can I bring people back to me? That's the Bible story. We need to know God's story. But we also need to know how our story fits right in with God's story. Does that make? It's not going to make sense yet. We need to be experts about our story, on how we fit into God's big story. Because He said, I want you to be my ambassadors. I want you to tell my story, but you tell your story within it. All right, ask any married couple how they met. Have you ever done this before? Yeah, kids, and this is fun for kids. Kids, ask your parents how they met. But I ask you first, ask the dads first. Because dads will make this, you know, we went out on a couple dates. She couldn't refuse my advance to say, hey, would you marry me? So she did, and then we're married. It's just like 30 seconds max is the guy's story. And all the women are going, yep, that's how it goes, right? And that's the way it works. And then the woman comes in, let me tell you about this. He really was charming. And all the guys are going, right? And it's like, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. I just didn't have the words to say it. And it was wonderful. I was in this sea of dating just jerks, and it was terrible. And then our eyes met. And it was true love. Did anybody have that story? Because I don't think my wife would say that story. No. It's some rendition of it, yes. Some version, but and they talk about it, and it goes on, and that's the story. We need to be experts of our story on what difference Jesus has made. Every person who becomes a member here at Celebration, we ask them to tell their story, and we even help them. We say, here's how you do it. You talk about, what was your life like before Jesus? You know, just think about that. For some of us, we're going, man, that seems so long ago. But there's a time that you didn't know Jesus. Then you talk about, this is what Jesus did in your life when you met Him face to face. That you said, I finally found my purpose in life. Or I finally found this love that I've been running to in all the wrong places, and I finally found love, or whatever it was that Jesus did in your life. And then you talk about, well, what was your life now? That Jesus is in it, in every area of your life, in every aspect, every second. What difference does He make in your life? And those are the three areas that you say, that's my story. That's my story. I need to know this story because my story fits into God's story. God has changed my life. As He changes lives, He transforms lives. So we talk about that. Hopefully you know your story. Before Jesus, how He has changed you in your life now. But I need to go one more step forward. In order for you to be an expert, you don't need notes to tell other people how you met your wife. You don't need notes for that, do you? Does anybody? I'll just ask that. Anybody need notes? Oh, I forgot. How did I meet my wife again? I forget. No, nobody needs notes for that. You just know this story. We need to know our story. Well, how do you meet Jesus? But you know it this way. You know it in like a 30-second story. And you need like a 3-minute story. And you need a 30-minute story. You need the 30-second story because someone asks you, hey, so you're a Christian. And you can say, yeah, I belong to Celebration. You know, Jesus has changed my life, and that's where I call home. That's where I grow with Jesus, and I serve Him. 30 seconds, right? Somebody just comes up to you, and you should be able to say, this is me. This is why I'm a Christian. But sometimes you have people that they want a little bit more, and maybe they ask another question. You need a 3-minute type of story. What's your story for 3 minutes? Oh man, I grew up with all these Dutch people in Chicago. Whew, I survived. And I kept going and through life, but I didn't know Jesus. And we talk about the time that Jesus, it was like a boot to the head, like, wake up, Matt. This is life. And I didn't know that before. And the rest of my life through Him, man, it's been a roller coaster. What a ride. I can tell you little specifics how He's changed my life. That's like a 3-minute one. It's important to have the 30 seconds. It's important to have the 3-minute. It's important to be able to talk about instances. Some kid comes up to you and says, hey, tell me about Christianity. Where you can talk about how Jesus has changed your life. That he or she should talk about Jesus in their life because He radically transforms lives. It's like grandma you went on vacation and she says, tell me about it. She's not going to want the 30-second. She's not even going to want the 3 minutes. She wants to hear every detail. Some people want to know what difference Jesus has made in your life, and sometimes that takes a little longer. But this is your story. Your story fits into God's story. And even, we got that idea, it's important to figure out your style in telling your story that fits directly into God's story. We need to figure out our style. You know, there's some people that I would love to give a microphone and have them come up here and tell their story. But just the thought of that, you know, their palms start sweating and they would just totally freeze up and go, Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me. And they would just freeze up. And they would never come up here ever. But they have a story. It's like a baseball bat in this situation. Baseball's going on right now, and my team is doing really well, so I'm kind of happy with that. But in a baseball bat, there's a sweet spot right in the middle. You know, you have I'm looking at people like, you guys have played baseball, right? Oh, okay, all right. Some people are like looking at me like, what? Baseball? Okay, didn't track with me quick enough. Baseball bat, if you hit it off right above your handle here, it's not going to go very far. At the very end of it, sometimes it like lips off the end and it goes into the dugout. That's not the sweet spot. It's called the barrel of the bat. You hit it there, square in the middle. It goes miles. It hit it straight. That's our style. Our style is that sweet spot in the back. You know, I'll give you examples. The Apostle Paul was a stage person. If you gave him a microphone, boy, he'd run with it. He'd just keep going. Let me tell you my story on how I fit into God's story. I want to be right up in front. And I'll even get in your face if you need it. And I want to tell you about Jesus. And be energetic. The Apostle Paul was a stage person. He would just do this. But not everybody was a stage person. The woman that Jesus met at the well, that Jesus says, hey, you know, this person that you're with isn't even your husband. This is like number 7, isn't it? And she went back to her place and she said, hey, you have got to come and hear this guy. He told me everything I knew about myself. He told me my whole story. Some people are inviters. And they're just not confident telling their story, but they will invite people to find Jesus. I want to share God's story with you, but I know that this guy tells it a little better than me, so come to church so you can hear the good news. Some people are inviters. You know, some people are encouragers. Barnabas went on missionary journeys with Paul. And Paul's on the stage, yeah, let's do this. And Barnabas was that person that would just talk with somebody. Let me find out where you're at. Now let me tell you about Jesus that fits into your perspective, in your world. And I want to encourage you to come talk with Jesus. Get face to face with him. He was just personal. He was the person that somebody who was down and out. Someone is trying to go through life and it royally messed up. He would be the one that said, hey, God still loves you. He's still got plans for you. Come on, let's do this together. And he would encourage people. What is your sweet spot in telling your story? What's your sweet spot? You know, maybe there's not just these 3. There's others. You know, some people paint beautiful pictures because they want to say, God has gifted me and he brought beauty into this world. And they do it for Jesus. And they tell stories through pictures. You know, there's lots of different ways, but what's your sweet spot on telling your story and God's story? That's where I want to grab and say, get down to this. Let me go one step more. Sometimes we go the route of thinking, man, I can't do this. There's no way I can use the sweet spot on how I am wired to tell about my story within God's story. I don't know. I can't do it. I'll give you an example for myself. If I haven't given you all my bad examples so far, I'll give you another one. I was a rather young Christian, early 20s or so, and I went to a convention. And I was thinking, oh yeah, this will be great. And we were supposed to go to one of the meetings, and just because I didn't want to, I didn't go. And I sat and talked with another pastor, and there was so much pressure on me. I was dealing with a close loved one in my family that tried to commit suicide. I'm going through grad school. You know, my future is uncertain, and I'm feeling the pressure of being a single man in a tough culture to be a single person. And I'm dealing with all these feelings of, oh, God, what do you want from me? I want to be a child of God, and I know that I'm messing up in so many areas. And then it was almost like I just can't do it anymore. And I will never forget my pastor friend who just says, you know, you don't have to. God's got this. God's got this. You know, we think that we have to do all these things. No, if I don't have the right words, I can't tell my story within God's story. I'll be a failure. I'll never be able to do this. I can't do this, God. And every time he says, man, I've been waiting for you to give up. Do you not know it's my power and my words that you use? It's me. I got this. I just want you to be available to use my power and my words. And we say, no, wait a minute. I'm so messy. I'm so worthless. And God says, I got this. What I want you to do is just be available. And I will have people look past your messy life so that they see me. I will have them see me. No, God, I feel all this pressure to be pure and perfect. I can't be an example to other people. I don't even have the words. I didn't go to seminary. And God says, I got this. I want you to live life as you just truly are, a child of the King. I just want you to live like that. I say, no, God, I'm so scared to make a fool out of myself. And you too, but mainly myself. I don't want to make a fool out of myself, but I can't do this. And God says, I got this. It's my power that goes through your personality and your way of doing this, your style to tell your story within my story. It's my power that does this. Can you do this? This is the way you are an ambassador for me. I will give you the words. I will give you opportunities. Will you rely on my power for this? See, most of our frustrations in life isn't when Satan trips us up, grabs us by the ankle, and we start falling. That's not how it is. It's because we don't lean on God's power, that He might work through our style to tell our story within God's story. Can we lean on God's power, His words, that He will provide for us how to do this? You know, this is my simple prayer for us as we get wrapping up today. This is my prayer for each one of us. That we might pray for opportunities that God would use His power to do His work through us. It's not us. He just says, I want you to be my ambassadors. Tell your story and how it fits into my big story. That's all I want you to do. And just let me work through you. That's what I want you to do. Can you do that? See, we've come to know Jesus. We know Him better each day. We come to grow in our faith. We grow better each day. God's always saying, hey, I'm going to help you grow here. And we try to serve Him, serve all those that we meet. And it says, I'm going to help you with more opportunities to serve people. And it'll get frustrating sometimes, but I want you to encourage you to serve those you meet. But here we go. I want you to share God's love in your style. I want you to tell your story within my huge story of reconciliation, of bringing people back to God, about saying, we're friends with God again. I want you to encourage you because this is possible. So we dare to dream big today. Can we just dream big on God using us however He would like as His ambassadors to bring people back to God? That's what I want to end with our prayer. Would you pray with me? God, we have tried to walk through decluttering our faith. And it's You that brings us a saving faith. And it is You that gives us words and Your power to share that faith with others. God, may we leave here more confident than when we came here. Confident that Your power will work in us. That You will do great things through us. That knowing that You have loved us, You love us still, and You will always love us. God, would You guard, would You guide, would You protect us this week as we live out our faith in You. We thank You, God. Amen.